I had spent most of my life avoiding that old house, pretending its walls no longer remembered me. But when my mother passed away, the keys found their way back into my hands. The first thing I noticed when I walked inside was the silence, a silence too heavy to be empty. And then I saw it, the door at the end of the hallway, the same door no one had opened for 60 years. My father had locked it the week my brother disappeared, and he never spoke of it again. But the house never forgot. When I stepped into my childhood home, after so many decades, I felt as though time had folded in on itself. The scent of old wood, the faded wallpaper, the quiet hum that only empty houses seem to carry it all came rushing back with a force I wasn't prepared for. Every corner whispered memories I'd tried to bury, and every creak of the floorboards reminded me that the past has a way of waiting for us, patiently, until we're finally ready to face it. I knew this visit would change something in me. I just didn't know how deeply that closed door, the one untouched for 60 years, would reshape everything I thought I understood about my family and about myself. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about old houses, forgotten memories, and the secrets time tries to hide, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me your age and where you're watching from. I hadn't walked through that hallway since I was a boy, but somehow my feet still remembered the rhythm of those old floorboards. Each step brought back the ghost of a sound, my mother's footsteps, the muffled laughter of my brother, the low hum of my father working late into the night. The farther I walked, the clearer those memories became, as if the house itself was guiding me towards something it had held on to far too long. That closed door at the end of the hall stood exactly as I remembered it. Same chipped paint, same brass knob dulled by time. I paused in front of it, suddenly aware of how tightly my chest had pulled. It was strange how a single door could carry the weight of 60 years. I ran my hand across the wood, tracing the grain with my fingertips. My father had locked this room the week my brother vanished. I never understood why he wouldn't speak about it. He wouldn't even let my mother mention his name inside these walls. The silence that followed settled over our home like a thick fog, one that never lifted, not even after my father passed. Standing there again, I felt that same silence trying to swallow me. But this time, I wasn't a frightened child. I was an old man, tired of running from shadows that had shaped my life far more than I ever admitted. I knelt down, reaching beneath the doorframe. I remembered, after all these years, that my father used to hide things there, and sure enough, my fingers brushed against something cold. Bag, spore, rusted, and heavier than it looked. For a moment, I hesitated. I wondered if some doors were meant to stay closed, some secrets meant to remain untouched. But then I thought of my mother, of her last days, how she kept mentioning unfinished things and how she squeezed my hand as if urging me to return. So I took a breath, steadied my trembling hands, and slid the key into the lock. The mechanism groaned as if waking from a long sleep. What waited behind that door had been hidden for 6 decades, and I was finally ready to face it. The door opened with a sigh, as though the room itself exhaled after holding its breath for 6 decades. A faint smell drifted out, first dust, old fabric, and something else I couldn't quite name. A memory, perhaps. The air felt heavier inside, untouched by the warmth of sunlight that had slowly softened the rest of the house over the years. I stepped inside, cautiously, letting my eyes adjust to the dimness. The curtains were still drawn, their once white fabric now a yellowed shade of time. My father had sealed this place completely. Even the smallest crack had been stuffed with cloth, as if he feared the room might leak its secrets into the rest of the house. The first thing I noticed was the bed, small, neatly made. My brother's bed. The blanket was still tucked tightly under the mattress, the way my mother used to do every morning, and on the pillow lay a single object, a wooden toy car, its paint chipped at the edges. I hadn't seen that little car since the week he disappeared. My knees weakened, and I had to steady myself against the wall. I picked up the toy, turning it gently in my hands. I remembered the day my brother carved it with our father, sitting out by the porch steps while I watched, jealous of the attention he received. I hadn't thought about that moment in years, yet here it was, waiting for me in perfect silence. As I walked deeper into the room, I noticed something strange. Everything was preserved exactly as it had been the day he vanished. His clothes folded in a drawer, his books stacked on the nightstand, a half-finished drawing pinned to the wall. It was as if time had stopped, frozen in this one space, while the rest of the world continued without him. But then something caught my eye. On the desk, beneath a thin layer of dust, lay a small notebook. My brother's handwriting covered the cover in faded pencil strokes. My heart pounded as I reached for it, hesitating before opening it. Why had my father locked this away? What was inside that he didn't want anyone to see? My fingers trembled as I turned the first page, and there, written in a child's careful hand, was a date. The day before he disappeared. The date stared back at me like a silent echo from a time I had spent most of my life trying to forget. My brother had written it in large, uneven numbers, as if he knew the moment mattered even, if none of us understood why at the time. I swallowed hard and turned the page. What I found wasn't a diary entry, at least not in the way most would imagine. It was a drawing, a crude sketch of our house, done in pencil, but with one detail that sent a cold ripple across my skin. A small X marked on the side of the house, near the foundation. Beneath it, in shaky letters, my brother had written 2 words. Not safe. My breath caught. I turned the page again, and again more drawings followed. Dark shapes, a figure by the window, a shadow near the cellar doors, scribbles of eyes watching from places they shouldn't have been. I felt my pulse thudding in my ears. These weren't childish doodles. They were warnings. But warnings of what? A sudden memory surfaced. Our mother crying softly in the kitchen the night before he vanished, telling my father she heard something outside, something that didn't sound like footsteps. My father brushed it off, telling her she was tired, that the house made strange noises. But I remembered the fear in her voice, the same fear that echoed through these drawings. As I flipped through the last pages, I found something else, a loose sheet tucked between the binding. On it was a single sentence, written in hurried strokes. I think it's coming inside. A shiver crawled down my spine. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the notebook as if it might dissolve in my hands. For 60 years, I had believed my brother simply wandered off, that he got lost or met with some tragic but ordinary accident. But now I wasn't so sure. I looked around the room again, at the carefully preserved bed, the toy car, the sealed windows. My father hadn't been protecting us from grief. He had been protecting us from something else, something he believed was real, And as I held that notebook, a thought rooted itself in my mind, unwelcome and heavy. Maybe my brother didn't disappear. Maybe he was taken. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was trying to tell me something. The air inside was thick, heavy with the past, and I began to feel the walls pressing in. Every creak, every groan of the floorboards seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to hear. My brother's drawings, his words, haunted the corners of my mind like a shadow that wouldn't leave. I couldn't stop staring at the last sentence in his notebook. I think it's coming inside. The more I thought about it, the more the words gnawed at me. Something had been inside. Something that had watched from the window, followed them in the night. I stood up and walked toward the cellar door, the one my father had always warned me to avoid. There was no real reason for it, just a passing comment now and then about how dangerous it was. But I knew better. The real reason wasn't that it was unsafe, was that it held something my father was terrified of. I reached for the handle, but my hand froze inches away. A deep, instinctual fear held me back. What if I opened it and found something that wasn't meant to be found? The weight of those years of silence seemed to press harder on my chest. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the old wooden door, feeling my heart race in my throat. But then something inside me clicked. Maybe it was my age, or maybe it was the years of regret building up inside me. But I couldn't let it go. I had to know. My brother had known something, and my father had hidden it for a reason. I turned the handle. The door creaked open with an eerie familiarity, the same sound I remembered hearing on nights when I couldn't sleep. A cold draft rushed out, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I stepped inside, my footsteps slow, deliberate, as if I was walking into a memory I'd buried too deep to recall. The darkness swallowed me as I descended the stairs, and when I reached the bottom, I was struck by the smell. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, the unmistakable scent of something old, decaying. And in the dim light, I saw something on the floor, barbed. It had been placed there carefully, like it had been waiting for me. The box was old, its edges frayed and covered in a thick layer of dust. It sat there like a forgotten relic, untouched for years, maybe even decades. I knelt down, my hands trembling as I reached for it. The moment my fingers made contact with the worn wood, a strange coldness surged through me, as though I had disturbed something that had been lying in wait. I pulled the box closer, and for a moment I hesitated. I knew that opening it would change everything. What had my father hidden in here all those years ago? What had he been trying to protect me from? I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of things, papers, photographs, a few small trinkets. But what caught my eye was the thick envelope on top, sealed with old wax. It had my name written on it, in my father's unmistakable handwriting. I opened it carefully, as though afraid the paper might crumble to dust. Inside was a single letter folded in half. I unfolded it slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The letter was brief, just a few lines, but the words burned into me like a brand. I am sorry for what I've done. I never meant to hurt you. You must never go into the cellar again. Leave this house and never look back. I've kept this secret for too long, but it's time for you to know. I felt the world shift beneath me, the ground suddenly feeling less solid. My father had known. He had always known what was hidden beneath this house. The letter explained so much. The fear, the silence. The way he'd closed off parts of the house as though trying to shut out a memory too painful to bear. And then it hit me, the thing my father had feared, the thing that had come into our house all those years ago. I glanced back at the box, my breath shallow, and noticed something else nestled beneath the letter, another photograph. This one was different. It was a picture of my brother, standing in front of the house, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. But what stood out most was the figure in the background. A shadow, tall and thin, looming just outside the frame. It wasn't a person. It was something else, something I still couldn't fully understand. I stood there, staring at the photo, and realized the truth my father had hidden from me for so long. This house hadn't just kept memories. It had kept something else. As I stood there in the dim light of the cellar, holding the photograph and the letter, a chill settled deep inside me. The house had kept its secrets for so long, but I could feel the weight of them now, pressing in from every corner. My father had tried to protect me, to shield me from the truth, but there was no escaping it anymore. The past had a way of finding its way back, no matter how carefully we buried it. I walked back up the stairs, the box still in my hands, and closed the door behind me. The house had given me its answers, but they had only raised more questions. What had really happened to my brother? What was that shadow in the photograph? The truth was still out of reach, just beyond my grasp. But one thing was clear, I couldn't leave it behind anymore. The house, the memories, the secrecy were all part of me now, part of my story, and I would carry them with me forever. If you've ever had to face the past you tried to forget, or if you have your own stories about the places that shaped you, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that dig deep into the past.